Inside a giant space station, floating silently above a dead moon, something powerful and feared was locked behind layers of metal and energy shields. It had wings like black steel, eyes that glowed like dying suns, and a voice that once made armies run in terror. His name was Jiren, known across the galaxy as the Enraged Dragon of Drakethul, captured during the last Great War and now kept in the deepest part of the alien prison known as Sector Zero. No one dared to go near his cell, not even the guards. They fed him by machine, checked his condition through distant cameras, and avoided even saying his name too loudly. He hadn't spoken in years, only growled or roared, and when he did, the walls vibrated like they were alive. Some said he had gone mad, others believed he was planning revenge. But most just called him a beast. On a quiet day, a diplomatic team from Earth arrived at the station. The aliens hosting them welcomed the humans politely, but kept glancing nervously toward the lower decks. Among the Earth group was a translator, a calm and serious man named Harris, and with him came his 7-year-old daughter, Myra. She was small, curious, and never stopped asking questions. Her father warned her not to wander, but the endless hallways and strange glowing lights were too tempting. While the adults argued over peace treaties and the cost of rebuilding war-torn systems, Myra followed a strange low sound she thought was humming. But it wasn't humming, it was a growl. She walked past signs that said restricted, past guards who were too busy to notice her, and down into the cold, silent heart of Sector Zero. The growling grew louder. There was a giant door, glowing red at the edges. Inside, something massive moved slowly, like it was dreaming of storms. Myra stepped close, peeking through the force shield that shimmered like water. There, chained with alien metal that glowed blue, was Jiren. His eyes opened, he saw her, and for a moment, everything stopped. The alarms hadn't gone off yet. No one had noticed. The dragon rose slightly, its wings stretching a little. Myra didn't scream or run. She stared at him with wide eyes and tilted her head, like she was trying to remember something. Then, in the softest voice, she said a word that no one expected. "Dad." The dragon's eyes widened. The fire in his throat died. He didn't move. The force field held, but he could have roared, broken his chains, tried to melt the walls again. He didn't. Myra stepped closer and repeated, "Dad." This time, the alarms exploded. Guards rushed in, shouting. Harris arrived breathless, yanking his daughter back in panic, but Jiren didn't attack. He didn't growl, he only watched like he had just seen something he thought was lost forever. He whispered a word no translator could recognize, a word not spoken in centuries. Myra's father stared at the creature in shock, unable to explain what he had seen. The alien officials demanded answers, furious that a child had wandered into danger, but none of them could deny what had happened. Jiren had stopped. He had calmed. Something about the girl had reached through his rage. Whispers spread through the station. The humans began searching records. Myra's mother had been a soldier, missing in action during the war, last seen on the planet where Jiren was captured. No remains were ever found. The records said she had died. But now, everyone was asking the same question. Why did the most feared creature in the galaxy freeze at the sound of a little girl's voice? And why did she call him Dad? The prison station had never been so silent, even with sirens still blinking red along the walls of Sector Zero, and yet no one dared make a sound. What they had just witnessed. Jiren, the alien dragon, feared across the stars, had not attacked, had not roared, but had instead stood still as a statue when the human girl called him Dad. Myra had been taken back to the diplomatic chambers, her father trying to calm her while his mind spun with confusion, fear, and 1,000 unanswered questions, because the creature she had spoken to was not supposed to understand, not supposed to feel, and certainly not supposed to react like a father recognizing his child. Guards reviewed the footage over and over again, and each time they watched the moment Myra whispered that single word, they saw the same reaction: a pause, deep breath, and a soft look in the dragon's glowing eyes that didn't match his violent history. The alien leaders were furious and demanded the humans keep Myra away, claiming the situation was dangerous, unstable, and that Gyron's response might be part of some trick. Yet Harris couldn't stop thinking about the old stories his wife used to tell their daughter before bed, tales of a guardian with wings, a fire breather who protected a small village during the war. Someone Myra believed was real even after her mother vanished years ago. Harris had never believed those stories, always thinking they were just bedtime fiction. But now doubt began to grow in his mind as he remembered how Myra's mother had once disappeared behind enemy lines, where Gyron was known to have fought last, and her body had never been found, only her broken communicator, near the site where the dragon had finally surrendered. That night, Harris went through his wife's old journals stored on his datapad and found strange notes, sketches of a dragon with kind eyes, symbols of the Drakethal language, and one line written over and over again: "He promised to protect her if I couldn't." The words haunted him as he stared at a picture of Myra's mother holding her as a baby, standing beside someone tall and cloaked, a strange glow just visible behind them, like distant firelight. At the same time, deep below in his cell, Gyron lay still, not roaring, not growling, but staring at the glowing memory pad embedded in the wall, where an old image of a human woman flickered faintly, her voice no longer playing, but her smile, somehow still fresh in his mind, because he remembered her, Lena, the soldier who had not fought him, but healed his wounds after the great battle, who gave him food when he was left to die, who called him friend when even his own kind had abandoned him. He had made a promise to her, a rare vow made by his people in ancient times to protect what she loved most. But he had failed. Lena had died during an ambush, and Myra had been taken by fleeing ships, while Gyron had been captured during his search, locked away, chained in fireproof metal, left with nothing but silence and guilt, believing the child had perished too. Now, years later, the child had returned, alive, and calling him a name he never expected to hear again. The next day, Myra insisted on speaking to him again, even when the guards refused and her father tried to distract her. But her stubbornness won. Under tight security and human supervision, she was brought once more to the edge of the force field. Gyron did not move at first, only opened his eyes slowly as Myra stepped forward and whispered, "Do you remember Mama?" The dragon stared, then slowly lowered his head, and for the first time in the station's history, he spoke not in growls, not in threats, but in a voice low and deep, shaped by pain and memory, as he said, "Lena." The sound of that name froze everyone watching. Harris stepped forward in disbelief, tears in his eyes, and asked how Gyron knew it. Gyron told them, in simple words, about the time after the last great battle, when a wounded soldier had found a dying dragon and refused to kill him. He told them about the months they had survived together in a hidden valley, the way she had taught him human language, and how she spoke of her baby daughter back home. When she died, Gyron had screamed into the mountains, sworn to protect the child, and searched for her until he was taken. Myra listened closely, tears shining in her eyes, and she said quietly, "She said you had fire, but also a kind heart." That sentence shook the old dragon more than any weapon ever had. From that moment on, everything began to change. Gyron stopped roaring. He began to speak only when Myra visited. He told her stories of her mother, described places no human had ever been, and gave details that matched records thought lost. Still, the alien leaders were not convinced. They believed the dragon was manipulating the humans, playing a long game, hiding his rage behind soft words. They demanded Gyron be transferred to a different station, one farther from Earth. Myra cried and begged them not to, saying he wasn't a monster, but no one seemed to listen. That is, until Gyron did something no one expected. He asked, in the voice of a creature that once terrified entire fleets, to speak in front of the council, not as a prisoner, but as a guardian who had made a promise to a dying mother and had waited years in silence for the chance to keep it. The galaxy watched with held breath as the dragon, the little girl, and the truth they shared began to shake the walls of fear that had stood for far too long. The station grew tense with every passing hour, as whispers of the dragon's request reached every corner of the galaxy, from hidden colonies to star cruisers drifting between moons, and people everywhere waited to see if the enraged dragon of Drakethel truly had something to say that could change the story they all believed was true, because Jiren was supposed to be a monster, a destroyer of cities, not a guardian, not a father figure to a human child. But Myra stood firm, holding her father's hand as they entered the Grand Council chamber, where powerful leaders of different species gathered behind shields of doubt and suspicion, their eyes full of warnings. Jiren entered in chains, guarded by soldiers, his great wings bound tight, but his head held high, eyes glowing not with fire, but with something deeper purpose. He spoke calmly, telling them he was not Myra's real father, not by blood, but by promise that he had once sworn on the ancient code of his people to protect the daughter of the only being who had shown him mercy. And while the council listened, some leaning forward, others still frowning, a few began to wonder what kind of monster remembers a promise made in silence for 7 long years. When the speech ended, no applause followed, only quiet voices arguing in corners, and even though Jiren was returned to his cell, the council had agreed to delay the transfer order, which gave Myra hope, but also brought more danger than anyone expected. That night, while the station slept under the watch of 100 security eyes, a small craft approached in stealth mode, landing where no ship should have landed, and inside were masked figures with cloaks that shimmered like darkness itself. They moved fast and silent, avoiding guards with tools designed to bend light and sound. And their target was not Jiren but Myra. They believed that removing the girl would end the story, erase the connection, and allow the galaxy to forget what it had seen. They entered her chamber, but Myra wasn't alone. Jiren had sensed something. Even locked away in his cell, he felt something cold moving through the air, something wrong, and he roared, loud enough to shake the floor and awaken the entire station. Alarms screamed, lights flashed, the attackers fled, but not before Myra saw one of their faces, an alien official who had stood in the council just hours before, now exposed as someone who feared peace more than war. Jiren was furious, not with rage that destroyed, but with the fierce need to protect. He demanded freedom to keep Myra safe, and when the guards hesitated, he broke his chains, not all of them, but just enough to prove that the monster they feared could still return, but chose not to. Myra stood beside him, small and unafraid, and when her father asked her again if she was sure Jiren wasn't lying, she told him no, because even if he wasn't her real dad, he had been there when she needed one, and he had remembered her mother's last words. Harris, still shaken, finally admitted he had known more than he had said years ago. Before Lena vanished, she had recorded a message only he had heard, one that said if anything happened to her, the protector would come, not a man, not a soldier, but something stronger. She called him the fire that kept her warm. Now it all made sense. The secret wasn't just about the promise, it was about the truth of Jiren's past. Long ago, before the war, his kind had made ancient alliances with humanity's ancestors, ones erased from records after generations of conflict, and the bond he made with Lena was not the first. It was part of something older, something sacred, and Myra, though not his by blood, was part of that forgotten chain. The council was forced to listen once more, as proof was brought forth old data logs, genetic scans, even recordings from Lena's mission that showed Jiren defending her against his own kind. The truth was undeniable now. The dragon was not just a weapon or a prisoner. He was a keeper of something buried under fear and lies, but still, danger remained. The same group that had tried to take Myra would not stop. They sent warnings, spread false reports, and claimed Myra was being manipulated by a creature that used emotion as a trap. Some believed them, others did not. The galaxy was split, and in the middle stood a girl, a dragon, and a man who had once doubted but now saw clearly. As the final hearing approached, where Jiren's fate would be sealed forever, tension grew thick like smoke. Would they allow a bond beyond blood to matter? Would they see the truth, or would fear win again? Jiren waited in silence, not in anger but in readiness, and Myra stayed close, not as a weapon, but as a voice the galaxy could not ignore. What started as a strange encounter in a prison cell had become something more, something that could change history. If only the truth could burn brighter than the lies. The station was quiet, but not calm, as the day of the final hearing arrived, and all across the galaxy, beings of every kind turned their eyes to the broadcast that would decide the fate of the most feared creature in recent history, Jiren, the enraged dragon, who now stood not as a weapon, but as the protector of a human child, and the symbol of a long-buried truth. And though many still feared him, many others had started to hope that the stories were real, that the fire in his chest could warm and not burn, that promises could outlive war. The council hall was full, every seat taken, and the guards were tense, their hands near their weapons, watching the chained creature standing tall beside Myra and her father, who now no longer questioned Jiren's loyalty, but feared what the council might decide. The alien leaders spoke in cold voices, repeating old crimes, reading from long records of damage and destruction, and they asked how one little girl could erase the deaths of hundreds, how one old promise could balance the scales of justice. Myra did not speak right away, but when she did, her voice was clear. She said her mother had saved Jiren once, not with weapons, but with kindness, and he had done the same for her now. And if that did not count for something, then maybe the galaxy needed to ask what kind of justice it truly wanted. There was silence when she finished, the kind of silence that meant something had shifted, even if only a little. But just when it seemed like the council might reconsider their judgment, the lights dimmed, and an explosion rocked the station's eastern wing. Alarms blared. Security scrambled. A group of masked attackers, the same shadow force that had tried to kidnap Myra before, had returned, this time not to steal the girl, but to eliminate Jiren completely before he could be released. They had powerful weapons, disruptors that could tear through even the thickest alien alloy, and they moved quickly, disabling guards and breaking through sealed doors. Myra and Harris were rushed into a protected chamber, but Jiren remained behind, surrounded by panicked soldiers who didn't know whether to trust him or restrain him. In that moment, he made his choice. With one great roar, he shattered his bindings, not to escape, but to defend. His wings opened for the first time in years, cracking the air with ancient force, and his body glowed with heat, not from rage, but from purpose. He took to the air inside the station, flying through wide corridors, chasing the attackers like a storm of flame and shadow. He didn't kill them. Instead, he disarmed, disabled, and forced them to retreat, blocking their path to Myra. His control was frightening in its precision. The same dragon who once burned cities now used his fire to melt weapons, not people. The council watched in awe from emergency feeds. Even those who doubted him saw now what kind of creature stood before them, not a monster, but a guardian who had chosen mercy over revenge. After the threat was gone, Jiren returned quietly, wounded but calm, and waited for the judgment he knew might still go against him. But everything had changed. The station's head of security stood and declared that Jiren had done what their trained units could not. Myra walked forward and placed her hand on his arm, and the image of the girl and the dragon standing side by side was sent across the galaxy in seconds. The council voted. The results were not unanimous, but they were clear. Jiren would not be executed. He would not be sent away. He would be released under Earth's supervision, bound not by force, but by trust. Many protested, many cheered, but one thing was now clear: the dragon had made his choice. He could have escaped, he could have destroyed, but he chose to protect. That choice meant more than his past, more than fear, and more than war. As he left the council chamber, the words of an old promise echoed in his mind. and the voice of a human woman long gone seemed to whisper in the air, "Keep her safe. Even when I'm not there." He had done that, and now, for the first time in years, Jiren stepped into the light not as a prisoner, but as a father in all the ways that mattered. A month had passed since the day the dragon chose mercy over fire, and the galaxy still buzzed with questions, debates, and disbelief as news of Jiren's release continued to spread from star to star, stirring emotions both old and new, because for generations he had been seen as the face of destruction, the beast who brought ruin, but now he had become something unexpected, a protector, a father figure, and a living symbol that even the fiercest heart could change. And though many still watched him with wary eyes, there were those who began to believe that fire could also warm, not just burn. Jiren now lived on a peaceful colony planet called Dranova, one of Earth's outer settlements, covered with green forests, wide blue lakes, and soft hills that stretched into the horizon, far from battlefields and politics, a place chosen, not just for safety, but for healing. He stayed in a quiet valley beneath a large mountain, where the air was clean and the stars, at night, were brighter than anywhere else. And there, Myra visited him every day, sometimes with her father, sometimes alone, carrying books, questions, and an endless stream of laughter that even Jiren could not resist. He had built a home of stone and flame, simple yet strong, and though it looked like a cave from the outside, inside it held warmth, light, and even a small corner where Myra kept her drawings and toys. To the world, they were still an unusual pair, a massive dragon with ancient scars and a tiny girl with bright eyes and soft steps, but to each other, they had become something more, something no law could define and no council could break. Still, peace did not mean the end of danger. There were whispers in the dark corners of space, from those who had lost power when the truth came out, those who still feared Jiren's strength and Myra's influence, and one of them, an ex-council member who had gone into hiding, sent a message through hidden channels, and the bond before it becomes a symbol. A bounty was placed, silent and secret, for the one who could remove Myra and turn the dragon wild again, and soon, unknown ships began passing near Terranova, their signals masked, their intentions hidden, until one night, under a red moon, the skies above Jiren's valley lit up with strange lights. Myra was staying in the valley that night, sleeping peacefully beside the warm hearth Jiren had built for her, and the moment he sensed the change in the air, he stepped outside, his wings rising slowly, his eyes glowing gold, not with rage, but with warning. A shadow moved at the edge of the forest, then another, until the valley filled with silent shapes carrying weapons designed to weaken even creatures like him. And yet Jiren did not roar, did not strike. Instead, he sent a signal through the wind, a coded message Myra's father had taught him that warned the colony without waking the girl. The battle that followed was swift, quiet, and fierce, as the dragon flew through the night with grace and fury, not destroying, but protecting, scattering the attackers and chasing them into the stars with fire that marked the sky like lightning. Not a single tree near Myra's shelter was harmed, and when she woke, all she saw was her protector standing at the cliff's edge, watching the stars fade into dawn, his wings folded gently, his breath calm. The failed attack caused a new shift. Earth's council increased security. The colonies sent messages of support, and Myra's voice, recorded during a peaceful interview, was broadcast across systems. He's not just my guardian. He's the proof that people and creatures can choose who they want to be, not what others say they are. Her words reached places even Jiren's fire could not. In time, the colony built a center for peace studies in the valley, with Jiren's home nearby, where diplomats and children alike came to learn about the history of fear, war, and how both could be changed by one promise kept. And though Jiren never spoke much in public, he was always present, watching, teaching through his silence, reminding the galaxy that fire, once uncontrolled, could become the very light that guided others forward. At night, when the stars shone brightest, Myra would sit beside him, drawing pictures of dragons and planets, and sometimes she would look up and whisper, "I think she'd be proud of you." Jair never answered, but his eyes softened, and the flames in his chest flickered gently, not as a weapon, but as a heart learning to feel again. So the story of the enraged dragon did not end in fire and fury. It burned quietly, steadily, becoming a new fire, one that would not destroy, but warm a future once thought impossible.